Hello and good morning. Welcome to Messages from the Morning Man. And now for today's message. Kotakraba Market has recently been rebuilt, but for the longest time it was a labyrinth of tabletop enterprises zoned by the Metropolitan Assembly to aid their market toll collections. So all vegetable sellers were zoned together, fishmongers in one area, butchers all in a row, fabric sellers in their own enclave, and so forth. Now, in the vegetable section, the same logic was applied. So pepper sellers were together, onion sellers in one place, and so on. The one product that had the most sellers was fresh tomatoes. Now, about 8 or 9 different tables were adorned with the red fruits piled together in 4s or 5s, each pile being offered at a fixed price. These prices didn't much differ from vendor to vendor, and as soon as the shoppers drew near, all the women would take their samples and accost the shoppers in the aisles, hoping to entice customers with the freshness and or cheapness of their particular selections. Now, on the many occasions throughout my childhood that I accompanied my mother to Kotakraba, there was one tomato seller who I never saw joining the assault on customers. She always sat calmly behind her table with a big smile on her face. She never left her post because 80% of the customers came to her. Most of the poor shoppers being accosted were actually fighting their way through her competitors to get to her table. Now, I've tried and failed to remember her actual name, so for the purpose of our story, let's call her Auntie Mary. Now, Auntie Mary received all her customers with the biggest smile you've ever seen. She knew everyone by their name. Even better, she had nicknames for everyone. She called my mother Adam, which is the fancy word for my mother's first name, Grace. And she even knew my name and called me Kojo whenever she saw me. Now, as soon as my mother and I made it to her table, Auntie Mary would greet us loudly with her big smile and ask after my father and sisters, as if she had spent the whole time since our last Kotakraba visit thinking about them. She knew what meals my mother needed tomatoes for and would simply reach under her table and bring up an already measured basket full of the big red fruit, empty them into a black polythene bag and hand them to my mother, who would pay her without even checking the contents of the bag. No haggling, no bargaining. They rather spent the time chatting about family and church and traffic and however many topics they could cram into their 3-minute weekly encounter. Then she would pat me on the head and say, Kojo, oh yeah, take our education seriously, aye, and send us on our way to make room for the next customer, who she would greet with the same big smile and personal greeting. Now, it was never quite clear to me why everyone preferred Auntie Mary's tomatoes to the other sellers. I mean, they all looked the same to me, and I seriously doubted that her tomatoes reacted in any remarkably different way when introduced into light soup. But overwhelmingly, people thronged to her stand in numbers that nobody else could compete with. She owned that tomato market. All other sellers were simply fighting for her scraps. Now, of course, as an adult, I now understand what her secret was. Attitude. That was the single crucial differentiator between Auntie Mary and every other non-scoring seller in the market. Their product was the same. They were selling it at the same place for pretty much the same price, but Auntie Mary made you feel like you mattered to her. To her, it wasn't about tomatoes, it was about you. It wasn't about your money or her product or your savings or her profit. It was about the things you really cared about. Your husband, your children, the price of lace and the yards you needed to buy for the number of funerals you had lined up for the month. It was about the increase in school fees and the decrease in chop money. It was about where on earth your daughter was going to find a husband. Her entire attitude was that whatever mattered to you mattered to her. And she went far above and beyond the basic effort required for selling tomatoes to give her customers a personal experience that they would never get anywhere else. So why am I telling you about Auntie Mary? Well, a conversation I had recently with a man whose advice I value greatly reminded me of this simple truth, that in this world, we are all selling tomatoes. Whatever job you do, there's someone else who does exactly the same thing, either right there at the next desk or in the next branch or in the next company. Even if you don't have a job, you are all You and all other unemployed graduates are all selling the same tomatoes to prospective employers. And ultimately, it is the best of you that will progress farthest in your careers and or grow the biggest business. So, since we are all doing the same job, since we are all selling the same tomatoes, what will be the differentiator? What will make you go farther and rise higher than your competitors? It's your attitude. Are you the one who provides that service with a smile? Is your business the one that actually shows an interest in your customers? When people come to you, do they get a personal experience that they can never get anywhere else? Are you willing to go above and beyond the basic effort required to sell tomatoes just so that when your competitors throw themselves at your customers, they will simply fight their way through the onslaught just to get back to you? Well, I certainly hope so, because in the end, the one willing to do the most will get the most. My name is Kojo Yankson. Good morning.